الله 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 ما لنا مولى سوى الله 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 ما لنا مولى سوى الله.
الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The topic today is on feminism, and this is my favorite topic to talk about. It's a very important topic because this is the one ideology that you can get in trouble for talking about, not in terms of the law, but in terms of people getting upset. So inshallah, I won't make anyone upset today. But this is an issue that is deeply affecting unfortunately, many segments or sectors of the Muslim community. If you tell religious Muslims who are traditional, we have to watch out for secularism. They say, yeah, of course. We have to watch out for liberalism. Yeah, of course. We have to watch out for perennialism. Yeah, of course. But feminism, the issue of feminism, this is controversial. This is one of the topics that people don't want to change, don't want to compromise, and they don't want to actually implement the traditional teachings on, and even the traditional rulings. But this is dangerous because this is a weak spot that the reformists, the people who want to change their religion, this is the door or the window that they push their reform in. And you see that the people that they want to reform, like they go to the masajid, you have a very traditional masjid, you have a very traditional madrasa, you have a very traditional institute. The first thing that they really want to push is women's issues. Those people who are actually liberal, or they want to reform, or they want to change. Why? Why do they focus on women's issues? Because they know that that is the one issue that people are hesitant to push back on. That the religious Muslims are hesitant to say, actually, no, we reject what you're saying. Because if you say, no, we don't want to change the way we do things when it comes to women, they'll say, oh, so you don't care about women's rights? You don't care about our sisters? Our poor sisters are suffering. Our poor sisters have it so hard, don't you know? We have to take care of our sisters. This is the emotional appeal. And then, as even the most... We know that the Prophet ﷺ cared about women. We know that the Prophet ﷺ cared about his wives and his daughters and the female Muslims of the Ummah. Of course, we know that the Deen does grant women certain rights. We know that. And Allah has also put within men a certain type of softness and compassion for women. That's natural. That's a natural part of being a man. Men want to take care of their mothers, their sisters, their daughters. We have a soft spot. So the people who want to reform Islam and they want to infiltrate the Muslim community, they focus specifically on women's issues. And that's why you see the first sign of when a masjid or a madrasa or an Islamic organization is starting to, on the path of reform, the first thing is women's issues that they start compromising on. And what you see, to be very direct and real with you, the first thing usually is the issue of ikhtilat, or mixing. That's the first thing that they will say, look, our sisters, they need to be in the same space. They can't see the imam. We can't put our sisters behind a curtain or behind a wall. This is not fair, They don't feel like they're part of the community. All of this type of language is used to appeal to emotions. And once you compromise on this, once you open the door to this, then on the basis of that logic, all reforms are possible, because the same logic applies. Like, for example, what about our liberal brothers and sisters? Yeah, they're not practicing, but we need to welcome them to the masjid, and we have to have a welcoming environment. Otherwise, we're pushing them away from Islam. Don't you care about their feelings? They feel judged. When you have a long beard and you're dressed in a certain way, they're judged. They feel judged by you. That's not welcome. And we have to, make them feel welcome. That's a part of Islam. They'll use this kind of language to justify all kinds of reform of Islamic practice, watering down the deen, watering down Islam. It's all based on this same kind of logic of feelings, catering to how people feel and what they think. So we have to just cut it at the root and say, sometimes you have to be harsh. Sometimes it doesn't matter how women feel. Sometimes it doesn't matter if women are angry or upset, if that's the case. So what? So what if they're offended? The deen of Islam is not here to cater to people's whims and desires. Islam is not here to make everyone feel happy and good. Sometimes you have to make a decision that is according to what Allah wants. And it doesn't matter if you yourself are unhappy with it, or women are unhappy with it, or children are unhappy with it. Feelings are not the ultimate objective. There's this concept of the maqasid of the Sharia. What are the aims of the Sharia? So aims like preservation of life, preservation of property, preservation of deen, preservation, hifz al-aql, for example, hifz al-nasab, like preserving lineage. These are different aims of the Sharia that Islamic scholars have discussed over the centuries. But there's no preservations of feelings. That's not a maqsad. That's not an aim of the Sharia, to preserve people's feelings. So we have to keep that in mind. And the reality of this is that people will get upset. People will have negative feelings for you. People will call you names. They'll say you're insensitive, you're harsh, you don't care about our feelings. Let them talk. Let them, there are worse things that you can be accused of. But that is the purpose of Islam, is to serve Allah, to please Allah. That is the ultimate goal. And our institutions and our organizations and our masajid and our madaris, they have to reflect that principle. The feelings of certain members of the community do not trump the principles of the deen. It's as simple as that. So once you know this trick and this strategy, then you can effectively combat it. This is how they want to infiltrate the masajid and the madaris. This is how feminism, in a very practical way, infiltrates. We have to make sure the women are mixing with the men. The women have the same space. Oh, why don't you have any female speakers? You invited Brother Daniel. Why don't we invite a sister to come and sit next to him, or to sit on the mimbar and give us a lecture? This is what they're saying. We need to have equality. If we don't have equal representation, then this is unjust, because our sisters will feel excluded. This is the logic or the quote-unquote logic that they use. So this is how they infiltrate and they reform and then they change. And it's happening all over, especially the United States. So we have to be aware of it. How do they infiltrate the families? How do they infiltrate the homes? The same way. They emphasize feelings. The most important thing is making sure that your wife is happy, and that basically all of her whims and desires are met. That is the most important. If you don't meet all of your wife's whims and desires, then you are deficient as a husband. You are not really a true man. You need to step up and make sure that your wife is pleased in every single way, all the time. Who gave us this requirement? Is this in the Quran? Is this in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ? And then they'll say things like, oh, but the Prophet ﷺ, he was so merciful and he was so kind and he was not harsh with anyone, etc., etc. They misappropriate the Sunnah and they distort the Sunnah. The Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ is not to cater to everyone's whims and desires and make sure everyone is happy all the time. No, that's not the case. There are many situations where the rights of the husband are overtaking, or they take precedence over, or they're prioritized over what the wife wants. Sometimes the wife wants something, but it's not her right to choose. It's not her right to decide. Like, what's an example of this? So, for example, what can a woman say that, well, we have a baby, but I don't feel like taking care of the baby. I want to take a day off, or 2 or 3 days off. I don't want to nurse the baby. Can she say that? Maybe if she will be more comfortable, does she have the right to abandon her children and do that? No, she does not. She does not have that right. Or maybe she doesn't even, midway through her pregnancy, she says, yeah, I don't want to have this baby anymore. We have to abort. My body, my rights. This is what they're teaching in society. We're so close to DC. This is the standard understanding of women's rights. My body, my choice. So it's my body. I don't want to be pregnant now, so let's abort. And the American culture now is that the husband has no right. The husband or the father of that child, he has no right to say, no, you have to, you can't, this is my child too, you have to deliver the baby. No, he has no right. It's her body. So this is, again, it's based on whatever the woman feels, whatever the mother feels. Even her feelings are more important than that child, the unborn child. When the child is born, her feelings is the most important thing. Everyone has to cater to the whims and desires of women. This is what feminism is. Even when they claim, they say, oh, well, feminism is about equality. The man and the woman are equal. This is not true. The actual feminist system prioritizes the whims and desires of women over everything else. Even within the marriage. Where's the equality? And I'll ask feminists, some of these even Muslim feminists, I'll ask them, well, you say that marriage is about equality. There has to be equal rights and responsibilities. So what is the responsibility of a wife? What is she required to do? They won't have no answer. What is a husband required to do? And then they'll say, oh, well, we know that the husband, he is required to provide maintenance or nafaqah. He has to make money to buy food and shelter and clothes. The husband has to provide for children. He has to make sure I have, the nicest clothes. I have a nice car. I have a nice place to live. That's the responsibilities of the Muslim husband. And they watch all of these lectures by imams. I call them compassionate imams in a kind of mocking way, because all they do is talk about the rights of women and what everyone has to give women. But they never talk about the rights of the husband. What does the husband do? What is the wife responsible for her husband? They never talk about that side of it. They only talk about what men have to do for women. Why? Because women are priority. The feelings and the whims and desires of the wife is priority. Every month they have a lecture or a khutbah on domestic violence. Oh, Muslim men, we're beating our women. This is terrible. We have an epidemic of domestic abuse in the community. Every month. And there's big national organizations, Muslim organizations, that the khatibs are all on the same group, like a WhatsApp group. And they send a message. Okay, it's that week of the month. Please give a khutbah on domestic violence. We expect that. And then they have a whole month about domestic violence. Make sure you talk about domestic violence. We have these shelters. We have these programs. We have this and that. Okay, so is domestic violence really an epidemic? Is it really a big problem? I'm not saying that it doesn't exist at all. Yeah, there are some men who are not doing the right thing with their wives. They're not meeting their duties to their wives. Yeah, that exists. That is a bad thing, no doubt about it. But is it an epidemic? Is it something that is happening so commonly that we have to dedicate 25% of our khutbahs to this topic? Or is this just an Islamophobic stereotype that Muslim men mistreat women and therefore we feel this inferiority complex that we have to overcompensate for it. So when you look at the actual abuse that's happening in the Muslim community in the US, we have an epidemic of husbands being abused. We have an epidemic of husbands being mistreated. We have an epidemic of Muslim women who do not understand what are their responsibilities in marriage. What are the rights of the husband? There's an epidemic of ignorance on the rights and responsibilities of marriage. That's the real epidemic. That's what we have to be addressing to create the actual balance, an actual Islamic marriage system that we are lacking because of catering to women's whims and desires. So many horror stories that you can hear about women abusing their husbands because they don't understand that a husband has rights. They will say that, yeah, the husband has to provide, make sure that we go on vacation once a year, make sure that we, have the best food, the best clothes, we live in a nice place. They'll recognize that, okay, the husband has these kinds of duties. It reached such an extent that some brothers have asked me, more than one. They've asked me, Brother Daniel, we need your nasiha. My wife is telling me and pressuring me to take out a loan from the bank so that we can move to a better house and buy a better car and get nicer clothes for her. And this is like a religious family. It's like, you mean a bank loan with riba? It's like, yeah, she's telling me that she's pressuring me. It's halal because there's a requirement that you have to provide me according to my status. I have a high status. My family is a high status. So you're not providing me with that lifestyle that I deserve. And it is my Islamic right that you provide that for me. So go into haram, go and get a haram loan so that you can have, you wear Gucci and drive a BMW. SubhanAllah. This is the distorted mentality that is being spread. And it's not like liberal Muslims, the ones that they don't care about hijab, they don't care about the Sharia, they don't care about learning about Islam. These are Muslims that they're getting these ideas about what Islam is from so-called shuyukh and so-called speakers that are spreading these false ideas. This is what the problem is. And or this idea that Muslim women, if they don't feel satisfied for any reason at all, they can just exit the marriage. They can just request a divorce and be divorced I just don't feel like staying married. And they say, oh, this is Islamic. We have this in Islam. It's called khula. Khula. Have you guys heard of this concept? So khula means, Islamically, does a woman have the right to divorce in Islam? Yes or no? Who says yes? Who says no? Only one person said no. About 15 people said yes. The answer is no. There's no talaq. Talaq is only the right of the husband to divorce. A woman does not have a right to divorce. She can request a divorce. She can request a divorce in exchange for the mahar, or even more than the mahar. But ultimately, her husband has to agree. So does everyone know there's 3 ways that a husband and wife can be separated and the marriage is ended. One is talaq, where the husband issues talaq, you're divorced. That's the standard way. Then there's khula, which is the wife requests to be divorced in exchange for mahar, the mahar. That's number 2. Or there's fasakh. Fasakh means there is a judge who annuls the marriage for a shari'i reason, for a legitimate Islamic reason. For example, the husband, he is not paying the nafaqah. He's not providing for her needs, the Islamically legitimate needs. So if he's not fulfilling his duties, then the judge can, on that basis, after he consults both sides and does investigation, he can make a fasakh, which is to annul the marriage. These are the three options only. There is no fourth option where just because a woman, she doesn't feel like being married anymore, she says, I divorce you and I'm leaving the marriage. This is very important for Muslims to know. And there's a reason that Allah has not given women the right to divorce. And the reason is that this is something that is dangerous. This will lead to the extinction of marriage. And that's exactly what we see within the West. In the West, they didn't have this, what they call it is no-fault divorce. No-fault divorce. It means that if the man or the woman, they don't want to be married anymore, they say, I want a divorce, and they can get divorced. The other person doesn't have to agree. The other side can say, no, I want to stay married. She says, no, I don't want to be married anymore. And then the judge will grant a divorce. And half of his property can be taken by her. Custody of the children can be taken by her. This is dhulm, this is oppression. And this is why many people don't want to get married. They don't want to get married because the laws are set up so that your property, when you get married in this country, your property is not really your property anymore. Your property is half belonging to her. How is that fair? How is that just? It's your property. You own it. In Islam, this is another important thing that is not being taught in many places. They don't teach that the property of a man is separate from the property of his wife. It's not supposed to be mixed. And if you look at the elder ulama and their advice when it comes to marriage, they always say this is very critical to keep your finances separate, because Islamically, your property is your property. You have a house before marriage, you have a car, you have your clothes, you have you have a business. That's yours. And then if she has her house, she has her car, she has inheritance from her family, that's hers. It's separate. And the only time that property is exchanged is if you give it to her as a gift, or she gives it to you as a gift. Otherwise, it should be completely separate. But the idea that now is being spread is that no, women have a right. The wife has the right to her husband's property. Whatever he has, it's also hers. Whatever money he has is also her money. And the legal system is being changed. It's in the US, this is the case. In Pakistan now, they've introduced new laws that if a husband has certain bank accounts, his wife must have access to those bank accounts. Otherwise, he is financially abusing her. And this is the law that they've now passed. Based on Western feminism, they call it financial abuse. Or they say, for example, this is another right that women are not aware of. In Islam, before your wife can go anywhere outside of the home, she has to have your permission. She has to have your permission. It can be explicit permission, like she says, oh, I want to go to visit a friend, and it's just a mile away, or it's down the street. Can I go? Okay, you can go. Explicit permission, or it's implicit. She knows that you are okay with her leaving to go to a certain place. She knows that it's normal, it's da'ah, this is the normal thing, and it's implicit that she has your permission. She cannot leave the house without your permission. In Islam, according to the law, which is based on feminism, no, she's her own person. She wants to leave whenever she wants. She can go wherever she wants, whenever she wants. And if you try to stop her, that's abuse. You are restricting her mobility. That is abusive, and you are committing domestic violence, and you can be put in prison for that. So the reality, this is a bigger topic, but the reality is we can't even practice basic marriage law, basic marriage rights and responsibilities according to Islam, in any of these Western countries, and now they're exporting all of this feminist doctrine to the Muslim countries as well. This Western feminist idea of abuse is now being transferred. So this is a very clear attack on Islam. The way that Islam divides the rights and responsibilities is to preserve marriage, to preserve the institution of marriage, to create stable, loving families, stable, loving households. And that's what the rules of the Sharia are designed to produce. Stable families that are going to create a stable society. As soon as you start messing with that and say, no, the wife has the right to divorce, no, wife has to have access to all your bank accounts and your property, no, a wife can just go wherever she wants, whenever she wants, no, a wife can go mix with whoever she wants, whenever she wants, don't be controlling, oh, a wife can just dress however she wants, don't tell her how to dress, that's controlling her. As soon as you give these kinds of rights, you are going to destroy the marriage. You're going to destroy marriage. You're going to destroy any kind of love that exists. And this is what people don't understand. The nature of women and the nature of men, it's a hierarchical relationship with men on top and women as followers. Men are leaders, women are followers. That is not only the standard that Islam sets, because Allah says in the Quran, "Ar-rijalu qawwamuna 'ala an-nisa," that men are the leaders and the authorities over women. That is the principle that Allah sets in Surah An-Nisa, the 4th chapter of the Quran, verse 34. And that's not only what Allah has revealed, that is how Allah has created men versus women. Allah has created the nature of man to be the leader of his women folk. And Allah has created the nature of women to be followers of the men. If you start changing that on the basis of whims and desires and this feminist theory of equality, you're going to create hatred. You're going to create animosity. You're going to create this kind of resentment. And that's what happens. The men who are the most catering to their wives, oh, honey, whatever you want. You know, he walks on eggshells. He doesn't want to do anything that will, disturb his wife's peace and, happiness. And he's basically her slave. The wife hates his guts. The wife hates him, actually, and looks down on him. Why? Because he's not a real man. She wants a leader. She wants a man's man, a man who will be in charge, who will take the lead. That's what she wants. But instead, she has this kind of, as the youth say, a soy boy simp. That's what he is. Why? Because all he does is cater to her, what she wants, whenever she wants it. Yes, master. That's how he's acting. You think that's what women want? No, that's not what women want. But this is the deception. This is the kind of dajjal or deception that we are experiencing in the world today. The women have been confused by this. That the society, the feminist society, is telling them that, oh, you should want equality. You should want to be equal to your husband and equal to other men. That's what you should want. So she's been brainwashed to think in that way. But her fitrah and the way that she's been created, her nature is telling her, no, you want to be a follower. You want to submit to your husband. You want to submit to your father. That's what her fitrah is telling her. But the social programming, the social engineering is telling her, no, you want to be an equal part. You want to be a leader, the women leader. Look at these women leaders in society. They're miserable people. They're miserable. These women who are the captains of industry, they are, in the corporate rat race. They are making 6 figures. They're driving the expensive cars, and they, or even at some of these liberal masajid, they're sitting on the masjid board. They're like lecturing. They're giving speeches as leaders to other men. They're giving talks to other men. They have very miserable lives. They won't admit it. Some of them do admit it. They write, every now and then you'll see an op-ed in the Washington Post or the New York Times. Women can't have it all. Women can't have it all. We can't be, happy with our families and also be successful in the corporate world. They'll admit it once in a while, that this whole idea of equality is a miserable failure. And then the stats make it very clear, the statistics. The statistics show that the level of depression now for women over 40 is at the highest levels ever. The amount of depression, the amount of antidepressant use, you will find that over 30% of women over 40 are seeking counseling, therapist, psychological help for crippling depression. They're extremely depressed. They're all on antidepressants. How can that be? Women are at the most educated that they've ever been. When you look at graduates of colleges in the US, 55 to 65% of college graduates are women. The majority, the clear majority of graduates are women. Women are getting better jobs. They're getting higher and higher positions. They are getting higher and higher salary. Yet, they're the most depressed that they've ever been. They're the most suicidal that they've ever been. There are more antidepressants than they've ever been. Isn't this a clear refutation of your entire project, your entire social engineering program to put women in this position of leadership over men? It's very clear. It's very clear. As soon as you start departing from the fitrah, you start deviating from the path that Allah has set for humanity, you're going to suffer. You're going to suffer because instead of following Allah's commands, you followed your whims and desires. You thought you knew better. You thought you know better. You thought you knew what you really want. But you don't know. What you think you want is something that you have just been programmed to think that you want. You've been brainwashed. You've been social engineered by a feminist educational system, a feminist media apparatus, movies, film, music, all pushing this idea, school system, college system. This is all just a complete social engineering project, and the result is a disaster for everyone. And what I really get upset to see is that Muslims are suffering from this as well. Muslim families are suffering from this. We see increase in divorce. Well, why is there an increase in divorce? I thought we were Muslim families. Why should our divorce rates go up? And it's happening in Muslim countries. There was a report recently that said a certain Muslim country, I won't say which one, but there was a 50% rise in women in the workforce in this country. 50% over the past year. Women are just rushing into the workforce, and the government is facilitating that in this Muslim country, supposedly Muslim government. And then they also note the divorce rate has also gone up by 50%. So you think that's a correlation? You think those two things are related? Of course they're related. Of course they're related. And it's because exactly what I said. When the woman, okay, she has a certain idea of, I want to be a leader, I want to be equal. That's the programming. But you can't change the fitrah. You can't change the nature. So when she starts becoming a leader, she starts making more money, she starts having more spending power, then she looks at her husband and says, well, this guy is not as good as me. I'm actually higher in my position than he is at my company. And then they look down on their husbands. They don't view their husbands as a leader anymore. And then they get divorced. And so many cases where the husband comes to me and he says, Daniel, please help, my wife wants to leave me. I say, well, why? He says, I don't know, it's just out of the blue. She just doesn't want to be married to me anymore. Then I asked some more questions. I found out that he was the one who was encouraging her to get a degree and to go work. He was telling her, yeah, you're my wife. I love you. I want you to reach for the stars and get that, amazing job, and I'll support you and go work. And okay, so you're the cause of your own divorce. She went to that job that you encouraged her to get, and she worked hard, and she spent more and more of her time with other men. She put the best time that she has in a day into her company instead of putting it into your home, into your house. Instead of taking care of you, cooking and cleaning for you, she was taking care of her boss. She was serving him, spending her energy on him instead of you. Then she got rewarded for it. She got more and more money. She got more and more position. And guess what? You didn't advance as fast as she did. So now she has a higher position. She's looking down on you thinking, well, I don't need him. I like this guy at my job. I like this CEO. I like this executive. He looks better for me as a husband than this guy. Even if she doesn't consciously think in those terms in her mind, that's how she feels. That's her nature. This is the wisdom of separating the genders and not mixing the genders, because you can't, when you see something, you don't know how that's going to affect you and how that's going to affect how you feel. That's why you lower the gaze, you separate, you use hijab, you use parda for this reason. This is the wisdom of the Sharia. Once you start deviating from that wisdom, then what do you think is going to happen? So those are just some general ideas for you that I want to share. And we can just do Q&A for 10 minutes, inshallah. Anyone in the chat also can type a question. Otherwise, just raise your hand.
So you identify lots of problems. What is the solution? What do you see as a solution for people getting married? Should they be getting counseling before getting married? So what kind of solution?
So what solutions are there then? That's the question. The number one solution is you have to educate yourself on really what are the rights and responsibilities in a marriage for husband and wife. You need to go to a traditional alim and learn that. Many people are getting married without the basic information, and there are also good books. There's very good books. Sheikh Ashraf Ali Thanwi has a very good book on multiple books on marriage and the rights and responsibilities of husband and wife, and they're not very long, maybe 80 pages. Before marriage, or even if you haven't studied it while being married, you get a copy. It's also online for free. Read through that very carefully. He spells it out very nicely, clear language in English, so that you know, and then that's how you need to organize your marriage. And then also, there is a course that we offer at my institute. It's called Wife School, and it's taught by my wife, and it goes in detail on what does it mean to have a traditional Islamic marriage. And there's 12 lessons, and it's pre-recorded, so you can just watch it whenever. And a lot of people, alhamdulillah, really benefited from that course as well. So that's the number one solution. If you don't depend on these random lectures online from compassionate imams, because they're preaching a feminist message. Though their message is going to destroy your marriage. And my social media, I explain many examples of this. Yes.
To follow what the brother was saying in regards to a solution, is there a possibility to have an Islamic social system, Islam implemented comprehensively? Say, for example, in the Muslim world, to really solve this type of problem, whether it's feminism, the LGBT stuff, or any other secularism, and all the other isms that you may have alluded to in other talks.
So the question is it possible to have a Islamic system in the Muslim world that will address all these problems of feminism and liberalism and LGBT, etc.? Yeah, it's possible, inshallah, one day. But the Western powers want to prevent that from actually happening. So any country that tries to implement this system, they immediately say, oh, this country, these Muslims are they violating women's rights, and they're abusing their women, they're abusing their daughters. And they exert all kinds of foreign pressure in order to prevent Muslims from actually implementing an Islamic system. So in the future, inshallah, that will happen. We have to work towards that. And we work towards that. The number one step is recognizing that the system that's in place today is a problem, it's dysfunctional, it's contrary to Islam, and it's contrary to human nature. It's going to lead to the destruction of human life. And that's what the awareness is really important, because unfortunately you have many Muslims who think that, oh yeah, the Western system, it's a great system, and Muslims can live there and experience freedom of religion. There's no freedom of religion if you can't even set the terms of your marriage contract. You can't. The secular law overrides your rights as a husband, your Islamic rights.
Can I just follow up with this?
Sure.
I think I wasn't really clear on the question. The question was about solutions. I know that we talked about there's materials available, there's books available, there's all videos available. But I was alluding to a solution where if someone is getting married, what should they do before getting married? Should the parent get involved? If you need to go counseling, you need the imam, or the imam before they do the nikah, they said, okay, you need to go through this couple of sessions with me, so you know ahead of time what contract you're getting into.
So the question is, before getting married, is there counseling sessions, or should there be like counseling sessions to prepare the couple for marriage? Yeah, that could be good. In some communities they do have that. Okay, before we do the nikah, you have to come and we discuss, the basics of marriage. That could be good. I wouldn't say it's a requirement, but it could definitely help. Let me just look at the chat, and then we'll come. How would you go about giving nasiha to family members who are feminists and looking to get married with these false expectations? I would just, so it depends on what the family member is. If the family member is a close family member, then you should just advise them with the understanding that you're trying to help them avoid a disaster. You're trying to help them avoid divorce. You're trying to help them avoid all kinds of harm that they will subject themselves to if they adopt a feminist mentality. And it's not just female family members. You have male family members that also have these wrong ideas about marriage, and they sabotage themselves in their marriage. So it doesn't matter if it's a male or a female. And by the way, this whole lecture wasn't about blaming women. Like, women aren't necessarily the problem here. It's men who are adopting feminist mentality, and they are subjecting their women to this wrong mentality, or they're catering to this wrong mentality. Men are the bigger part of the problem. So if you're advising a female family member or a male family member, just bring, this basic information. Bring anecdotes. Some people, they learn best from examples like, oh, this happened to a friend, this happened to a family member. Look at how their marriage ended. Look at how messy this divorce was. Some people learn best through examples. And that's actually how many women, they communicate, is through stories. So if you notice, a lot of the feminist narrative is on the basis of anecdotes. Like, oh, I know a sister, she was beaten black and blue every day for 5 years, and oh, it's so terrible. Okay, if that's true, that's terrible, right? But what does that have to do with the majority of the community? Majority of men are not doing this kind of thing. But that image or that idea, it strikes an emotional chord. It strikes an emotional note with people, and they remember that. But I can give you many crazy stories of women abusing their husbands. There was one example where the woman wanted a divorce, and she had 3 children with the husband, and she wanted to get divorced. And the youngest child was only 6 months. She said, I'm tired of you. I don't want to be in this marriage anymore. Said, and he was very nice, the nicest husband that you could ever imagine. He went too far, basically. He was catering to her, providing her whatever she wanted. He was changing diapers, he was washing dishes, he was working 50, 60 hours a week, and then coming home and washing dishes, changing diapers, watching the kids. Morning till night, this poor guy was working. She just, I'm tired of you. Why? I don't love you anymore. I don't like you anymore. After like 7 years of marriage, 8 years of marriage. So then he said, no, let's work it out. We can get through this, at least for the sake of the children. And then she said she was getting frustrated. She said, look, if you're not going to, she was religious enough. This is the crazy part. She was religious enough to know that she couldn't just, divorce him on her own. She has to give the divorce. So she was religious enough to know this, wearing hijab, going to the masjid, listening to all of these shuyukh online. So then she said, look, if you're not going to give me this divorce, I'm going to go hang out with my ex-boyfriend. I'm going to go out with him, and I'm going to ruin your reputation because I want people to see that I'm going out with someone else, not my husband. So I'm going to embarrass you if you don't give me the divorce. So what could he do? He was forced basically to, divorce the mother of his children. There are people like this. Many people like this. I can give you really crazy stories. Why are women and men not equal in certain things? Men and women are different creations. Allah created Adam, alayhi salam, and then He created his spouse from his rib. So women and men are different creations of Allah. They're equal in some things, and they're not equal in many other things. That is the way that Allah has created them. Can a woman request khuda if her bodily needs are not met? Some men feel the fitna is only affecting them. It's also affecting women, but some men refuse to accept. What's the solution? Yeah, so you have to, you shouldn't go directly to this option of wanting to dissolve the marriage. Why are the needs not being met? So you have to identify that. Why is that the case? Does he know that that's not the case? Have you talked to him? Have you tried to find a solution? Men feel the fitna is only affecting them. Okay, well, you need to block yourself from fitna. Fitna is affecting people if they expose themselves to fitna. So that could be the problem. Being exposed to fitna, cut off that. Try to find a solution. Why? Don't go to this idea of khul. Just take it out of your mind. Immediately, just take that out of your mind. Work for a solution. Be solution-oriented. Don't be victim-oriented. If it's a situation where really you've exhausted every option, then speak to a qualified imam and scholar or maulana and get his consultation. Or even now, get his consultation now. Yes.
But just to follow up as well, can we say it's important for the masajid in the Muslim community or any other institutions that we have to educate? You did mention you do have mashallah, a online university, if I'm not mistaken, that combats these types of issues and talks about them. But is it also now important that we talk about these concepts within our curriculums we have in our masajids? Like it could be during Geopolitical or mashallah, like an event that's taking place like this, or even if we have youth programs that we discuss these ideas, because there's one of us as a generation, and then we have the next oncoming generation to really understand what Islam is as a way of life, as an identity. So really, is it really important to talk about these topics as well, in addition to other Islamic topics that are available for us?
Yeah, so the question is it important to talk about this in addition to other Islamic topics? Yeah, this is an Islamic topic. You have to have courses and material, khutbahs that are dedicated, workshops that are dedicated to the rights and responsibilities of husband and wife. You really need to have that. And if you don't have that, what's happening is many Muslims are now going to people like Andrew Tate or these people on social media that are not qualified to teach the Islamic way. They might say some things that are in line with Islam. They might say a lot of things that are not in line with Islam. These people become a source of information because people were not getting that from more trustworthy, qualified sources. So there's a big need for it, and we have to provide that through courses, halaqat, durus, khutbahs, etc. Inshallah. Yes.
So, you have sisters who are finishing up from their high school now. What do you suggest they should do going forward in their career? What kind of line of certification or college, what kind of degree should they pursue, or should they pursue a degree? And what should parents do to help them steer forward in their career? Parents who have older daughters and
If you have an older daughter or daughter who is a teenager, okay, like getting to 16, 17, 18, 19, you need to be prioritized finding her a good husband. That's the first priority. And college can come later. So this is controversial and people hate it when I say it, but that's the reality. Prioritize marriage, and college, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Like, what is so important about college? College is a system for taking people into careers, taking people into a professional career. That's one of the purposes of college. The other purpose of college is to socially engineer the population. So we're not interested in, our daughters being socially engineered to become feminists, blue-haired feminists. We are trying to we want our daughters to follow Islam, to care about Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and to be good Muslimat. That's what we care about. So why go to college? Like, there's two purposes: going into a career or being socially engineered. Neither of those are Islamic goals. So why are we pushing daughters to go to college? It's the fault of the fathers. The fathers are at fault for this. Why do you need your daughter to go to college, to work? You want her to go and be in a corporate setting with other men and mixing with them? That's what you want? Or do you want your daughter to have a degree so that she can't find a husband because you've eliminated a large pool of men, right? Because you want your daughter to be married to a man who is more accomplished than she is, like has a higher degree and has a higher position than she does, because that's the natural order. That's what she wants as a daughter, as a woman, and that's what you want for her as a father. So if you educate her more and more and more and more, the potential husbands that she can find are becoming less and less and less and less. You're making it harder for her to find a suitable husband. So this is, I don't understand it. Like, why do you want your daughter to have a PhD? You basically you're making her suffer. You're going to make her, because to finish a PhD or even a master's degree, she's going to be in her mid-20s, late 20s, maybe in her 30s. You know how hard and how difficult it is to find a husband in that situation? So I don't understand. Are you the enemy of your daughter or her father? Yes.
Just to follow up on that question. So, like, what if, some daughters are, like, the parents still want them to complete education? What are your thoughts on them doing, like, a virtual type of program or working remotely in this day and age?
So for the daughter, when she gets married, inshallah, to a suitable husband at, young age, then maybe she wants to go, she has time to do some virtual education, halal environment, or work from home. Maybe she can do that, no problem. As long as it's a halal income, she's not mixing with men. Yeah, enjoy, go and do that. But you have more time to enjoy and pursue your interests as a woman when you're married. You're fine. Like, think of me as a rational person. If there are many things that I want to do, I prioritize the things that are the most sensitive. I prioritize the things that are most sensitive, the most important, the things that will have the most impact on me and my life the longest term. That's how a rational person thinks. So marriage, who you're married to, is one of the biggest dunyawi priorities in dunya, is who is going to be your spouse. So I want to prioritize that as opposed to things that I can do later. I can do later after I get the important things done and established, taken care of, then I can pursue other things with peace of mind. So I don't know why women And some brothers also, they don't have this mentality. When I was a teenager, I was trying to get married. I was trying to, okay, I need to find a good wife. I need to like really prioritize that. That's a big priority because that's going to affect my entire life in a very profound way. Why would I prioritize things that are not as important? Now, for brothers, it's a little different because you do have to establish yourself financially. So there's a motivation that you do focus on your studies, you do focus on finding a good job, you do focus on pursuing that. That makes sense for brothers, but for sisters, it makes no sense. In Islam, a woman does not have any responsibility to provide for herself. That's the reality. Now, you can have certain exceptions. A woman who has no family because she's a convert, like no Muslim family because she's a convert. There are exceptional cases where, okay, she does have to worry about work or she has to worry about pursuing an education for work. Okay, those are exceptions. But for the vast majority of people in the Muslim community, that's not the situation. The situation is one where you should prioritize getting married first and foremost, then pursue other things later after you get first things done first. Okay, so I think I have to go now. So, oh, okay. Sure, no problem. Yeah, no problem. Any other questions? We have more time. Yeah.
So you're speaking about the Islamic countries. There are more than 50 countries. Yeah. So why there is no any power or any just say any Islamic system that stand and say, oh, this is wrong. You cannot do that or prevent these situations to happen. We want to, we want our life. We want to live under an Islamic law. How do we escape this? At the end of the day, we are living under some liberalism country. So why there's no such a power?
So the question is, why is there no power to create an Islamic system and actually implement Sharia and Islamic rules? Why is there no country like this? Well, I think there is at least one country like this, today that is trying to implement the Sharia rules and is going against a lot of pressure, especially on the question of women's rights. There is at least one country, I think, alhamdulillah. I won't mention the name of it for maybe after the lecture we can talk about it. But the reason is there's so much international pressure. You're violating international law if you actually implement an Islamic system. The Islamic system violates international law as determined by the United Nations. And the United Nations will institute sanctions because there's a Security Council that with certain countries in that Security Council, like the US, like Russia, like China, like the British, like the French, and Germany, they will implement sanctions on your country if you violate feminism. If you violate feminist principles, liberal principles, you're going to be sanctioned economically. You're going to be, there can be invasion. They can order military strikes against your country. It's very complicated because they use a carrot and the stick method. The stick is the bombs and the sanctions, but they also use the carrot. So these international bodies, they will say, okay, do you want aid? Do you want your country to be economically viable? Well, then you better, play ball. You better reorganize your society. You also have to make your country open to NGOs. NGOs are non-governmental organizations. Make your country open to them to come and promote feminism, basically. So a lot of Muslim countries have these NGOs that are dedicated to feminism, actually. And they come into your country and they say, oh, this country has so much abuse against women. This country is not putting women in positions of power and women are not represented in the government. and then they will create an international scandal for your country. And if you try to kick out the NGOs, they'll say, oh, this country is trying to kick out these human rights organizations. That means they're human rights violators. And then they also use ways to entice the intellectuals of a Muslim country to go to the West and study in the West. And that creates a brain drain, basically. So you have a Muslim country, all of the most talented intellectual Muslims in that country, they get scholarships, they get all kinds of grants to go study in the West, and usually they stay in the West. Or if they come back, they've been brainwashed and they've been liberalized, and then they come back to their countries, very wealthy, and they spread liberal ideas, feminist ideas. So it's a whole program designed to make sure that Muslim countries are liberal, feminist, and under the boot. Yes.
I'm not sure how true this is, but I've heard that the Amish people, they have some special rules for them. So could us as a Muslim just unite and have certain regulations just for us in the United States?
So the question is, the Amish seem to have their own rules that they can abide by. Can Muslims do the same? I think there's like a limited opportunity to create some family law. But I know different Muslim scholars who have tried to implement this and work with the legal system in the US, but they haven't been successful. And in the future, they're probably not going to allow Muslims to have their own. Like, okay, you can practice your family law, but there's always opt-out. So you, for example, a husband and a wife, you want to arbitrate any kind of conflict within the marriage according to Sharia and under the guidance of Islamic scholars, but she might opt out and say, no, I don't want to. So then how can you enforce anything? If the husband opts out, it's not a problem, because the legal system here, women can get their Islamic rights very easily. Women can get their Islamic rights very easily. The danger for women is not getting their Islamic rights. The danger for women is getting much more than their Islamic rights and doing dhulm on their husbands. That's the bigger danger for women. And that's what I advise any women who are listening to this, to fear Allah. Fear Allah. Just because the legal system is allowing you to take more than what you are legally allowed according to the Sharia, don't do it, because you're threatening your akhirah. You're going to be doing dhulm on your husband. Just because the law says that you can take half of his wealth, you're not entitled to half of his wealth in Islam. So if you take half of his wealth, you are stealing. That's theft. Or the law, the Western law, feminist law, is saying you can have custody of the children and you don't have to give him any visitation or minimal visitation rights in a divorce. If you do that, this is a big dhulm on the children. It's a dhulm on your husband. So you're going to have to face Allah and answer for those kinds of crimes. So fear Allah. The problem for women is just going too far. Yes.
Just to follow up like what the other brothers had mentioned, say brother that in a scenario where there is a Islamic country in the line of similar to what the Prophet established in Medina, would it be better than, if that was available to Muslims, would it be better just to leave America and go live our lives in this type of Islamic institution, like the Prophet established in Medina?
Yeah, if there is a place that has established Islam like in Medina, yeah, we should go. We should go if we can go, but there's all kinds of other considerations that each individual has to make. You know, we talked a little bit about this last night, that there are many reasons. There's no system like that currently exists anywhere in the world, and if it were to exist, it would be very dangerous, because so many of these Western powers, as long as they're in power, they're going to prevent that from happening. And they're going to sanction, bomb, do all kinds of harm to such a country. So in that case, it's an excuse for a Muslim not to go somewhere where they're endangering their lives or they're endangering their families. Yeah. Yes.
So there are non-Muslim voices regarding feminism as well, in social media where there are Jordan Peterson and other from non-Muslim population, they also kind of raising their comments about it. And my understanding is like they don't very much align with Islamic point of view of feminism. So what's your thought on like how much they are similar or they are similar, and they have like a larger following, and in certain, let's say if there's a new law being passed, how as a Muslim we can align ourselves with that section of the population.
Can you be more specific?
So I'm saying it regarding anti-feminism or
Anti-feminism. Okay.
so there are certain non-Muslim voices we can heard about. What's your thought on like how similar Islamic perspective to those one, and how where do you think there's a similarity? Can we support when like can we align with them when there are some laws being formed so that we can have like a majority voice and repel those
So the question is, there are some anti-feminist commentators online and in wider society, public intellectuals. To what extent can Muslims align with those figures to create a kind of unity or a coalition? I would just be very careful, because a lot of these so-called conservative voices, they will critique some aspects of feminism, but they will not actually critique the root problem. So their critique of feminism is very superficial, and they don't agree with the Islamic system. They don't agree with an Islamic system. If you ask Jordan Peterson what he thinks about women wearing hijab and women being separated from men, he will not agree. The thing that you see from online voices is very superficial. They'll say things like, "Yeah, we disagree with zina. We disagree with women, being immodest. We disagree with these kinds of things, like with equality, marriage, etc." But they don't have the solution, and they're not willing to advocate for the solution. The solution is Islam. The solution is, okay, you implement the hijab. The solution is that you don't encourage women's leadership. You don't encourage women's education. You have to implement early marriage. That's a big deal. You have to encourage daughters to get married early, as much as you can. They don't want to advocate those kinds of things. So you have the solution, or you recognize the problem, or at least part of the problem, but you're not willing to actually pursue the solution. So these aren't very strong allies. Yes.
What's your opinion regarding like this that there are certain conditions where women are included, like teaching, etc. So how would you like what would you do?
Yeah, so there are some careers where women are needed, like teaching. Maybe certain aspects of the medical profession, women are needed. Yeah, women can go and pursue that. How does that contradict what I've said today? No, that was a real question.
Now, so they can have career in those.
Yeah, so after the priority is taken care of getting married, then you can pursue certain kinds of education, certain kinds of career as a second priority. But the priority is your husband, the priority is your children, the priority is making a happy home, being a homemaker. That's the priority. Then if you have extra time after that, you can pursue different kinds of interests, no problem. You can work from home, you can be involved in your specific interests. No, there's no contradiction there.
how vocal should we be regarding this issue with our coworkers or classmates? Should we just focus on just the Muslim population, or should we be vocal about it with our coworkers or the non-Muslims regarding this issue?
If the question is, how vocal should we be with coworkers and colleagues or classmates about feminism? If you want, talk to them about it as much as you want. It could be a good door for dawah. You know, if you have that kind of relationship with, I assume you mean non-Muslim coworkers. So a non-Muslim male coworker or classmate, you want to talk about this? Great. It's a great opportunity for dawah, because you can just talk about a general social problem. And then when they're on the same page, then you can talk about, well, in Islam, this is how we address this issue. The dawah that I do is all about pointing out problems and crises and epidemics within the Western culture and the secular liberal system, and saying these problems are avoided if you follow Islam, if you implement the Sharia. Yes.
So normally we see, in the family, the daughter also wants that should also be given, option to study, and many of the time they can go for doing nursing courses or some medical assistant courses. So it is advisable for the parents to allow her to get that kind of education.
Prioritize marriage. The question is, what about medical assistance education?
Yeah, that's true. But once the parents paradise that they should be married first, and once she's married, she won't have any option to do these courses, and doing these courses and involving for the job is a full-time job, going to the hospital, working as a nurse or working as a medical assistant. She's fully involved in that. So of course, involving 100% in that affair, getting her away from the family affairs. So do you think they should go for that or should not go for that?
Okay, so the question is, should we encourage the daughter to go and pursue like nursing or being doctor? Because if we encourage her to get married, then she won't have time. She won't have the option to go pursue that education. So, you can ask her, do you want to be a doctor and make a big salary and have a lot of respect from I don't know who, but you get a respect. You're going to be alone. You won't have children. You are going to be very lonely and depressed for a lot of the rest of your life. Or do you want to not be a doctor and have a loving husband and have loving children and a big family that's going to take care of you and cherish you for the rest of your life, and you are going to experience what the Prophet ﷺ said, that the Jannah is under the feet of the mother, and you're going to have the opportunity for Jannah, because that is one of the if your husband is pleased with you, then Allah is pleased with you. All of these avenues for Jannah, all of these opportunities for Jannah are coming from what? Being a wife. I don't remember any hadith that said, oh, Jannah is under the feet of the female doctor. I haven't read that hadith anywhere. So ask that question for your daughter, which one is she going to choose? I know many women, Muslim women, who know about them, that they pursued a medical degree. They were accomplished. They went to the best medical school, Harvard Medical School, Yale Medical School. They went to the best residency. They're working at the top hospitals, the top doctors, and they're alone. No children, no husband. It's not that no one will marry them. It's because when they have achieved that level of success as a doctor, they are not attracted to any of the potential men. They have to marry, sometimes they marry a non-Muslim. So is that what you want for your daughter? Like, be real. Be real. Understand what you're actually getting yourself into. And then that's enough. Like, when people know what is the reality, then they'll make the right choice. They don't need me to tell them, don't do it. This is exactly what brainwashing is. There's a desire that has been implanted into your brain. This is not a natural desire. No one is naturally wants to become a doctor, like a little girl. No one naturally wants to become like this particular job of being a medical professional. But every girl wants to be a princess and have a Prince Charming and to get married and to have babies to take care of. That's a natural desire that girls have. That's what is coming from the fitrah that Allah has created. This idea of you need to be a doctor, that's implanted by culture, backwards culture, from society. This is brainwashing. So we have to deprogram. Yes.
So mashallah, for the men, we have role models of many Sahaba. Is there any role models that our sisters can look up to, whether it be the wives of the prophets, as an example?
Yeah. So there are many examples of Sahaba who are role models. Do we have any females who are role models for sisters? Yeah, the Sahabiyat, the Ummahat al-Mu'mineen, the wives of the Prophet ﷺ. If you look at the vast majority of them, they were mothers, they were homemakers, they were cooking and cleaning. So many hadith about the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, cooking, cleaning, taking care of the Prophet ﷺ, taking care of their husbands. That's the majority, the vast majority of the lives of the Sahabiyat were homemakers. They were homemakers. So if we're taking them as the example, as role models, why are we not implementing that? Why are we pushing, oh, you need to be a career woman, you need to go get a college degree, you need to go into medicine, you need to go and be a strong, independent woman? Where is this coming from? It's not coming from the example of the Sahaba or the Salaf. Don't we need, this is from the chat, don't we need some degree of women in the workforce in an Islamic society so women can go to the doctor and we can have segregated classes? So the question is Islamic society. Okay, so are we in an Islamic society here in the US? No. We're in a non-Muslim society. There are plenty of, if you want to send your wife or your daughter to a female doctor, there are so many of them. So why do we need to send our daughters to go get the medical degree if this is really the concern that you have? But if you want to talk about Islamic society, okay, let's talk about an Islamic society. This is the problem that everyone brings. Oh, we need female doctors for our wives and our daughters. So therefore, we need to, recreate a Western-style educational system and send our daughters to go study for 8 years in the university system, medical school, etc. This is a fake problem. If you want an Islamic society, that means a hypothetical society that we can control. It's a very easy solution. We have to first recognize the problem of women's education. The problem is that it delays marriage, and our daughters can't find suitable husbands, and then they go into careers where they can't be suitable wives, they can't be suitable mothers because they're career-oriented, because they went to college. That is a problem. Do we recognize that as a problem? That's step number one. And the people, they don't want to acknowledge, like people who ask this kind of question, they don't want to acknowledge the problem. They quickly want to say, oh, but what about female doctors? We need female doctors. Okay, fine, I agree. We need female doctors. I'll grant you that. But can you first recognize the problem? That the system that exists in the West is a bad system that causes problems and creates all kinds of issues for the Muslim community. Can we all agree on that? Can we recognize that? Yes or no? If you don't recognize that as a problem, that means you don't understand reality. You don't really understand the situation of the society here. You don't understand the situation with our families and our wives and our daughters. So first, let's recognize the problem. Then we can talk about, okay, well, what about this other issue of female doctors? Guess what? That's easy to solve. It's easy to solve. You're asking about if you're asking about this society, the female doctors already exist. Because non-Muslims, they send their daughters to go to college and medical school, and then those are your female doctors. If you're talking about Islamic society, okay, we can set up schools where daughters, they get married at an early age, but those daughters who want to also pursue a medical degree or they're interested in the medical sciences, it's going to be a small percentage. A small percentage. Then they can pursue higher education after they get married, and they can over time get medical expertise to go into the medical field. So they get married and they can go into medicine. Very easy solution. That doesn't require adopting this Western system. So I fail to see how this is a counterpoint. Yeah.
Do you think social media plays a big role on feminism spreading in FES? So how parents can prevent this?
Is social media a problem for spreading these feminist ideas? Yeah, absolutely. It's a big problem. So how can we prevent that? Don't give your children cell phones or smartphones. Don't give them access to social media. Wait until later in life. It's very important. Yes?
There's been a lot of, back and forth, with feminists and Muslim feminists specifically, constantly citing the example of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he used to help out around the house, and you can come home and you can do that. Look, the Prophet did that, but these kind of things. How does one respond to them? In a manner that they can understand. I think they've made that a kind of when they look at the Sunnah, they make it like, it was an expectation, right? Like, when the husband comes, if you follow Sunnah, you're supposed to help out. So how do you respond to someone like that, saying that's not the expectation, that he was there to help, but it's not the expectation from the man that you come home and help?
Yeah, great point. So the question, to repeat it, is a lot of these Muslim feminists will cite about the Prophet ﷺ, how he helped in the house, he worked in the house. Therefore, they have an expectation that husbands, in addition to their jobs, they also have to come home and do household responsibilities and chores, etc. So how do we address this? There's different ways to address it. One way to address it is to reference other examples within the Sunnah or the Seerah. So one example is Fatima radiallahu anha, the daughter of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who was feeling very overworked, or she felt like she was very tired and she had many responsibilities in the home. And then she went to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to ask for a servant that can help. So the Prophet ﷺ didn't give her a servant to help or a slave to help. And he also didn't tell her husband, Ali, radiallahu anhu, oh, you need to help more in the house. Why didn't he say that? Why didn't he tell the Prophet ﷺ tell Fatima's husband, Ali, to help more in the house? If that was the model, if that was this kind of equality was the model, that's what he would have said. But he didn't say that. He just told her, gave her adhkar to recite after, or dhikr to do after salah. That was the solution that he gave her. So that's one counterexample of many. When we look at the Ummahat al-Mu'mineen, they were involved with cooking. There is no hadith about the Prophet ﷺ cooking for his wives. Where's the hadith about that? Or cleaning for his wives? There's no hadith about the Prophet ﷺ doing those kinds of things. Yeah, he would help, if there's something that mending his own clothes, for example, doing something for himself rather than asking someone in that situation, he would do it for himself, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that was out of his mercy and out of his good character. But it wasn't like he would go and mend everyone's clothes in the house, oh, all the children, give me your clothes, I'm going to sit and sew and mend everyone's clothes. We don't see any hadith like that. So this model of equality in household chores that you have, show the evidence, show the proof for that. You can't just take one hadith out of context and interpret it in a feminist way. And then the other point to make is that the husband, There's no appreciation for the husband in today's society because of this feminist programming. There's no value placed on what the husband does, and the burden on the husband's shoulders or the father's shoulders. There's a lack of appreciation. Women need to appreciate, and husbands themselves need to appreciate what they're bringing to the marriage. You think it's not easy to work at a job and to be the provider when you're bringing home that money for your family. All rizq is from Allah, but you're bringing that rizq and you are providing for your family. That is a huge burden and a responsibility on your shoulder with so much stress. And if there's any kind of issue or emergency, who has to take care of that emergency? Is it your wife? You know, if the police are knocking on the door for some reason, or there's an issue with the neighbors, or there's a leak that comes from the roof, is your wife going to go into the attic and check what's the source of that leak? I thought this was equality. So maybe if I'm going to be responsible for changing the diapers, you can be responsible for the leak in the ceiling, or the refrigerator stopped working. Are you going to go fix the refrigerator, or find someone to come fix the refrigerator, or go buy a new refrigerator? Are you going to do it, honey, or am I have to do that? Or at night, there's a sound that I hear in the garage, or I hear a sound in the backyard. Are you going to go check what that sound is, or me? You want equality? Okay, your turn to go check in the middle of the night. Here's a flashlight, go check it out. So if you're not willing to do that, then you don't really appreciate the role of the husband. You don't really appreciate what I'm bringing to the table. You've taken it for granted because it's not like a everyday thing. It's not every day that you're fixing the appliance or dealing with an emergency. The emergency is a once in a while thing, but it's a big stress. It's a big burden that you are responsible for. And that's why the husband has the position that he does. That's why he's qawwam. He takes care of those big problems. That's why he needs to be big and strong, and he needs to be, the most capable, the higher status. That's why. That's why women want that. For the emergencies. Not for changing the diaper every day, not for washing the dishes every day, not for doing these kinds of tasks. That you can do those. You can do those. The emergencies, I'll take care of. Now, if you're going to set that kind of expectation, which you should, if you want to set the expectation of qawama like in that way, then make sure that you are actually qawam. Make sure that you do take care of the duties. Make sure you do pay the bills on time. Make sure you do, when there's snow, I guess there's not much snow in the past 2 years here, but when there is snow, make sure you do clear the driveway. Make sure you do take care of the leak. Make sure you do change the batteries on the smoke alarm. Make sure you do, these kinds of tasks in a way that she will respect it. And then when she respects you, she's not going to ask you to change the diaper. She's not going to ask you to do the laundry. She's not going to ask you to take care of these small things. That's your pay grade, to put it in another way, is higher than that. And that's how it should be. That's how it should be. Yes.
Can the husband, is the husband allowed to help it? Not asking the wife doesn't ask the husband, is he still allowed to help?
Is the husband allowed to help? This is also related to another question on the chat. Is there anything wrong with a man helping his wife at home if she's truly in need of help, especially if her workload truly is more than his, such as living in joint family system where all work is on the wife, or a large family where the woman is the one responsible for all the work alone? So yes, the husband should help. The husband needs to be understanding. That's part of being a leader. A leader understands that when his teammates or his team needs help, and he will come in and provide and help with that situation. But it's a temporary thing. It's a temporary thing. It's a one-off thing. But the roles and responsibilities should be defined very clearly. This is my role as a husband. This is my role as a father. This is my role as a leader. And this is your role. And then sometimes, my wife needs a hand. Like, for example, my wife. Sometimes it's like a very tough day. The kids were not listening, and they were very loud, and they were fighting, and The food got burned when she was trying to cook. So she's just having a very stressful day. She needs like a break for the rest of the day to just go and sit and not deal with the kids. I'll come in and I'll take care of that. Okay, I'll watch the kids. Don't worry. I'm going to, or okay, the food got burnt for some reason. I can cook something real quick. I know some basic cooking. Or we'll just order a pizza. No problem. That's part of leadership. That's part of being a leader is, okay, sometimes team members, they have a bad day. Sometimes family members can have a bad day. You have to be flexible enough and understanding enough and merciful enough to step in and provide that support. That's part of leadership. But those are exceptions. They don't define the rule. Just like any business, everyone has roles. Sometimes there are emergencies that you need to take care of, and people have to, it's all hands on deck. But in a business, everyone has a defined role. The CEO doesn't do the job of another executive, and the executive doesn't do the job of the director, and the director doesn't do the job of the manager. Everyone has their own role. And that's the same with a marriage. And then I don't know the specifics of this question that was asked in the chat. So she's the one responsible for all of the work alone. Yeah, if she's responsible for all of the work, depending on what that means, then okay, that's very strange. She's doing all the work, so she's not only taking care of the house, she's paying all the bills, she's paying all the taxes, she's taking care of. Is the husband just sitting on the couch, literally doing nothing, watching TV all day? Is that the case? If that is the case, that is a problem. But I can't really give any more answer than that without specifics. Yes.
What do you suggest for a man looking for a spouse, and the man already has, maybe he's a CEO or maybe he's a doctor already? Should we marry another doctor, or should we find someone who does not have a degree and just, what should we go, like, what should be his criteria? Maybe the doctor is together, but should we see that as a red flag, the fact that she is highly educated in her career, or should he be okay?
So the question is, there's a man, he's a doctor, he's highly educated. Should he also look for someone who is highly educated to marry as a wife, or should he avoid? Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said that there's 4 reasons for marrying a woman: her wealth, her family background, her beauty, or her deen. So prioritize marrying for deen. That should be the case. But then beyond that, family and wealth and her beauty, those are also important things to consider. But her status as a doctor, no one, a Muslim man shouldn't marry a doctor for the sake of her status. Like a doctor is valued, or an engineer is valued within the non-Muslim society. But is that something that you value? Why? Like what quality does that bring to your marriage? Now maybe this is a doctor and she has some kind of personality that is pleasing to you, or you see that she has some kind of personality or attributes that are pleasing to you, or she has very high religion, good religious values, okay, then maybe that would be a good match. But if there's one person like that who's a doctor, and another person who also has a good personality, good deen, everything equal, but she's not a doctor, in that situation, go for the non-doctor, for sure. Do you get what I'm saying? Everything is the same. One is a medical doctor, the other one is not. Go for the non-medical doctor. Do you know why?
She didn't go through the whole system.
We're talking about someone who already has the degree.
No, if one doesn't have, if one is not a doctor, and then one is a doctor,
Yeah.
so you should go with the one who is not a doctor,
Why?
because she doesn't have to deal with the whole field on a daily basis. And she doesn't have to.
Okay, let me change the scenario where neither of them are working in their profession.
And neither of them have went through the, oh, they're both doctors? But
No, no. One is a doctor who's not practicing. The other is not a doctor. Everything else is the same between them.
Even then, non-doctor, because the doctor went through the 8 years of study. You know, in those 8 years, she spent so much time with learn the whole procedure.
Okay, so he should go for the non-doctor.
So they're both beating, right?
No, one is not.
One is not
He
beating.
missed the point. It's more on
Yeah. No, they're both equal in deen.
They're equally beating.
They're equal in deen. They're equal in everything, except one has a medical degree. Who should you marry?
The one without medical.
Why?
Because of the whole procedure she went through.
But we're saying, imagine she went through to an all-women's college. She went through all-women's college, and there was no mixing with non-mahrams.
I mean, the fact that she has a degree might tempt her to eventually wanna, pursue that.
No, she's not going to pursue that. She's not going to pursue it. Which one is better?
I would go with the non.
Why? And you already said that 3 times, that you prefer the non-doctor. But we want to know why.
I'm not.
Because you're not a doctor. This is an important principle. Does anyone know why? Yeah.
She might think she's better than you because she has the degree.
Yeah, she might think that she's better than you because she has the degree. So even if she doesn't practice, she's not planning to practice, she didn't do anything haram, she didn't mix with non-mahrams, still the fact that she has a degree gives her a certain status, a higher status. And when she has a higher status, unless your status is way above her, she's going to have less of attraction to you, all else being equal. But if she has no degree, her status socially is going to be much lower. She's going to look up to you much more, and she's going to be more attracted to you, even if she doesn't know consciously why. So that's exactly right.
So even if I am a doctor, I still shouldn't go with it because then it's equal.
Yeah, if you are a doctor too, the same principle applies. So remember, we said all else being equal. The situation, if it's a situation where maybe the one with the degree, she has other qualities that make her, like she's maybe more religious, maybe she's more beautiful, maybe she has a better personality, then there could be reasons to marry the doctor. But we're talking about a hypothetical scenario. Yeah, on the chat, the right answer to non-doctor is better. The doctor mentality will be different when she raises kids, and she will feel higher in marriage. Yeah, that's right. Yes. Oh, another text. Did I say something wrong? Okay, 10 more minutes until. Yes.
I don't know if I asked might be obvious, but I'll still pose the question to you. The kind of the manosphere with the whole radical movement, we've spoken about that, like, and I agree with these conservatives. A lot of it is just to get Muslim views and things like that. But from the Muslim side of this same red pill, they're now, I'm hearing arguments how they're saying it's better to marry a regular feminist than a Muslim feminist, because a Muslim feminist will, they're not going to split everything down the middle. They're going to want all their rights plus whatever's feminism. Versus at least if you marry a non-Muslim feminist, they'll at least split everything half, the same from bills and things like that. So in terms of these kind of players and these arguments, because the users, I don't want to drop some names, but we all know, that it's some very visible Muslim speakers that are part of this. How do we kind of correct this for the youth? Like, is this Islamically? I don't think it's like a position that Islam supports. Obviously we're marrying a non-Muslim that comes down to feminism issues, but how do we encourage them to, I guess, kind of weed out some of the bad messaging that's happening even amongst our community? So
the question is, how do we help the community weed out the bad messaging that comes with the manosphere online type of anti-feminist discourse with Red Pill, Andrew Tate, etc. The best solution is just to teach Islam, like authentic Islam. The Muslim voices and speakers have just the popular ones. A big reason why they're so popular is because they cater to feminism. They're getting like the majority of their financial support is from women who are, some of them, they're just wealthy. They didn't get married, they don't have kids, so they're sitting on a lot of money, and they just pay these compassionate imams, these simp imams, big checks, literally. And so those compassionate imams, they don't want to stop the money train. So they keep preaching this kind of feminist message. So that's the reality of a lot of the American dawah. It's been co-opted and it's like a business. It's run by money, financial interests. So, but there's a big opportunity because it's caused so much discontent and so much anger. People are tired of this kind of feminist message. And so now is the time for people who know better, imams, speakers, ulama who know better, just teach the authentic, correct balance. Don't sugarcoat anything. Don't cater to women's feelings. Just say the clear truth. And that will be an antidote to so many of these problems. And now is like the best time to do it because there's kind of a collapse that's happening. All of these ideologies are in free fall. Why? Because the West is losing power every day. It's becoming weaker, and there are other world powers that are rising geopolitically, in terms of China, in terms of Russia, in terms of this like third bloc. They're rising in power, and the liberal feminist West is losing power very rapidly. Their stock is tumbling. So if you think of it in a business mindset, when stock is tumbling, you don't want to buy, right? You want to sell before you lose everything. So we as Muslims, now is the time to offer an alternative. Like now, as their stock is tumbling, here is the alternative. And we don't want to sugarcoat or compromise. Otherwise, we're losing out. Like we're not going to profit as much. We have to be very clear on what Islam offers. And no matter how much you might hate it because you're been brainwashed by that liberal system, now we present that as a solution, and people are going to flock to that. Inshallah. They already are. Like if you look, people send me messages all the time about, oh, I became Muslim because of, realizing this system is so false and it's so backwards, and Islam provides a clear solution. So the kind of mentality, like there was a period after 9/11 where the dawah was extremely sugar-coated and appeasing liberal attitudes, feminist attitudes. Islam means peace. Islam is about mercy. Like that was a wrong type of dawah in the first place. But now it's even more out of place. Now it's even more useless than it was even 10 years ago or 20 years ago. Counterproductive. Why do you have an AJ Plus sweater? I'm like, huh? He doesn't know AJ Plus. No. Yeah. So. Right, anything else? I didn't mean. It's a nice sweater. Okay. Yeah. It's a nice sweater. Don't worry about it. Huh? Okay. No more questions. Okay.
Daniel, can you elaborate on like we live in a Western society, right, built on secularism, separating deen from life. Do you feel like, based off of this foundation for life, is this not the opposite of what Islam proposes, where we live by what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and because of this differences in life, we see these problems with feminism, we see the other problems, the other isms arise because of this removing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from your daily life.
Yeah, so a lot of the problems are because of removing Allah from our consideration of Ridwan Allah, pleasing Allah from life. Absolutely. So that's what we need to be offering humanity. Like we have a responsibility to provide humanity with dawah so that they come to guidance. And if you want to truly be merciful, then you need to convey Islam as it was meant to be conveyed without modifying it, sugarcoating it, distorting it for the sake of being politically correct. So many people will tell me, "Oh, Daniel, you're too harsh. Why are you saying things in this direct, immediate way? Don't you think you should be more diplomatic, be more soft?" I tell them why. Like, my responsibility is just to convey the truth. Whether people accept it or not, that's up to them. So, and if you change the truth, then it's less than, it's falsehood. You're going to be a source of misguidance. Okay, جزاكم الله خيرا for everything, and سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.